I need to ask you something that made my stomach drop the first time I heard it. What if I told you that when you travel to the United States, your phone can become an open book without a judge, without a warrant, and sometimes without you fully realizing what you just agreed to, because that's not a rumor and it's not a movie scene. It's happening at airports right now. I am Sarah, I am 22, and I started digging into this after hearing too many stories that didn't add up. Stories from people who did everything right, followed the rules, had their documents in order, and still walked out of an airport feeling exposed, confused, and honestly humiliated. And I want to talk about this with you, especially if you're rewatching from Mexico, because there is a huge gap between what many of us think happens at the US border and what actually happens when you land. We grow up believing airports are neutral spaces controlled, yes, strict, sure, but fair. You show your passport, you answer a few questions, you smile, you move on. That's the expectation. The reality is, sometimes the border doesn't stop at your suitcase. Sometimes it goes straight into your pocket phones. WhatsApp, Instagram, photos, messages, contacts, notes, even things you deleted, and here's where it gets uncomfortable. U.S. border agents always need a warrant to ask for your phone. And if you not a U.S. citizen, the power balance is very different from what most travelers imagine. Think about that for a second. Your phone isn't just a device. It's your life. Your family chats, your jokes, your opinions, your private fears, your political thoughts, your faith, your relationships. Now imagine being tired from a flight, standing in a cold airport line, and hearing a calm voice say something like, "Can you unlock your phone for me, please?" Would you know you can say no? Would you know what happens if you do? This is where a lot of people freeze, because technically, yes, you can refuse, but in practice, refusing can mean delays, extra questioning, missing connections, or even being denied entry. And this is where many Mexican travelers feel the double standard. Because let's be honest, not everyone is asked the same questions. Not every passport triggers the same level of curiosity. Not every accent is treated the same way. I've read accounts from people who were asked about memes they shared years ago, about WhatsApp group messages taken out of context, about Instagram stories that suddenly became suspicious. And the scariest part, most of them didn't even know this was possible until it was already happening. If you've ever crossed the border or flown into the US, I want you to pause here and ask yourself something very real. If they asked for your phone today, would you feel safe handing it over? Because the next part of this story gets even more complicated, especially when we talk about what agents are legally allowed to search and what they often end up seeing anyway. Yes, there's a big difference. Before I go any further, I need to clear up one dangerous myth. A lot of people believe border agents can only look at public things, like what you post on Instagram or what anyone could see anyway. That sounds reasonable. It's also not fully true. Here's where things get confusing, and honestly, a little scary. At you. Airports, border agents have special authority that goes beyond normal police rules. They call it a border search. And under that logic, your phone can be treated almost like a suitcase. But your phone isn't a suitcase. And that contradiction is at the center of everything. There are two kinds of searches they can do. One is what they call a basic search. That usually means scrolling through what's on your phone directly. Photos, messages, WhatsApp chats, Instagram DMs, notes, contacts, even your camera roll from years ago, no warrant required. Let that sink in. The second type is a forensic search. That's when they connect your phone to special software to copy data, recover deleted files, or analyze everything more deeply. That one usually requires higher approval, sometimes even suspicion. But here's the problem. No one explains to travelers. When you're standing there, nervous, tired, jet-lagged, you're not told which type of search is happening. You just see someone holding your phone. And for many non-US citizens, especially tourists, students, or people visiting family, there's an unspoken pressure to cooperate, because the question isn't really, can they? The question feels more like, what happens to me if I don't? This is where I want to be very honest with you. If you're not a US citizen, border agents can deny you entry for reasons that feel vague, discretion, concerns, incomplete answers. Things that are hard to fight in the moment. So when someone asks for your phone password, it doesn't feel like a choice. It feels like a test. And I've noticed something that keeps coming up in Mexican travelers' stories. They're not asked only about travel plans. They're asked about opinions. Why are you visiting? Who do you know here? What do you do for work? Why did you post this? Who is this person you're chatting with suddenly? Your WhatsApp family group isn't just jokes anymore. It's context. A meme isn't a meme, it's intent. A message taken out of tone becomes suspicious. And I know some people watching might think, well, if you have nothing to hide, I get that, I really do. But ask yourself this instead. Would you be comfortable if a stranger misunderstood your humor, your sarcasm, your cultural references? Because humor doesn't travel well across borders, neither does irony, and neither does trust. This is where the double standard starts to feel real. People from some countries are assumed innocent until proven otherwise. Others feel like they have to prove innocence before they're even allowed in, and no one tells you this when you buy the plane ticket. If you've ever been pulled aside, asked extra questions, or felt like you had to explain yourself more than others, I really want to read your story below, because this isn't abstract. This is personal for a lot of families, but there's something even more unsettling coming next. Because it's not just about what agents can look at, it's about how small actions, one answer, one message, one misunderstanding, can change the entire outcome of a trip. And once that door opens, it's very hard to close. This is the part where a lot of people say, okay, but if I'm polite, calm, and honest, everything should be fine. I wish that were always true. Because what I've learned is that at the border, perception often matters more than intention. Let me explain what I mean. Border agents are trained to look for inconsistencies. Not crimes, not guilt, inconsistencies. A date that doesn't match. A contact name they don't recognize. A message that sounds casual to you, but vague to them. And once they think something doesn't line up, the entire tone changes. I've read cases where someone said they were visiting for tourism, but had WhatsApp messages talking about helping a cousin or maybe working a few days. In Mexico, that kind of language is normal. It's informal. It doesn't mean a job contract at the border. It can mean everything. One sentence, one message, one screenshot taken out of context. And suddenly what was supposed to be a family visit turns into suspicion of illegal work. What was meant as a joke becomes a red flag. What was a private conversation becomes evidence. This is where many travelers realize something too late. Your phone doesn't explain your phone, and explaining yourself under pressure is not easy, especially when English isn't your first language. Especially when cultural nuance gets lost, especially when you're speaking to someone who has the power to decide if you sleep in a hotel or on the next flight back. I want to pause here and ask you something directly. Have you ever noticed how the rules feel flexible? Depending on who you are, some people say the border is just about security. Others experience it as judgment. And for many Mexican travelers, that line feels very thin because there's another layer to this that doesn't get talked about enough. What happens after? Even if you're allowed in, being searched, questioned, and analyzed leaves a mark. People describe feeling watched for the rest of the trip. Afraid to post, afraid to text, afraid to joke, afraid to be misunderstood again. That's not tourism, that's anxiety. And this is where I start asking myself hard questions. At what point does security become intimidation? At what point does protection turn into profiling? And why are travelers expected to know rules that are never clearly explained? If these stories matter to you, if you felt this tension, or if someone in your family has, why conversations like this need to exist. Quietly pretending it doesn't happen hasn't helped anyone, but I haven't told you the most important part yet because there are things travelers can do. Not to fight agents, not to cause problems, but to protect themselves and avoid unnecessary trouble. And most people only learn them after something goes wrong. This is the part I wish someone had told my friends before they booked their flights. Because once you understand how this works, you stop seeing the border as just a line on a map. You see it as a moment where knowledge actually protects you. Let me be very clear about something first. This is not about hiding. This is not about lying. This is about understanding power and being prepared. At the US border, agents can ask, they can request, they can pressure, but that doesn't mean every traveler has the same obligations. If you're a US citizen, you cannot be denied entry for refusing to unlock your phone. They can keep it longer, they can question you, but they can't turn you away. If you're not a citizen like most tourists, students, or visitors from Mexico, the reality is harder. Entry is considered a privilege, not a right. That changes everything. And that's why many people feel forced to comply even when they're uncomfortable. So what can you actually do? First, understand that you are allowed to ask questions calmly, respectfully. You can ask why your phone is being searched. You can ask if it's a basic search or something deeper. You can ask what happens if you decline. Just asking doesn't make you guilty. Silence and panic are often what escalate situations. Second, be mindful of how you talk about your trip, not because you're doing something wrong, but because casual language can be misread. Words like help, work, stay a while mean different things at a border than they do at home. Third, remember this: nothing on your phone has context unless you give it. Agents don't know your family dynamics, they don't know your humor, they don't know your culture. So if something is misunderstood, slow down. Explain. Don't get defensive. Confusion is not a crime. And finally, something that matters emotionally, not legally. If this feels unfair to you, you're not imagining it. Many Mexican travelers feel a pressure, others don't. They feel watched in a different way, and pretending that experience doesn't exist only isolates people who go through it. If you've experienced this or something similar, I really want to read your story, not to judge it, not to argue, but to understand the patterns we don't see in official statements. Because this isn't about fear, it's about awareness. And awareness is what turns confusion into confidence. If these stories matter to you, if you believe travelers deserve clarity instead of anxiety, you know what to do. Subscribe, stay here. This is a conversation, not a headline. Like this video so more people hear about this. Share it with someone who's planning a trip, and please leave a comment telling me what you've seen or experienced. Your story might help someone avoid a very difficult moment.